Madam Speaker, America is about people. Who we are and what we are is because of the people who are Americans. They're individuals who have lived and died and influenced the rest of us because of their tenacious spirit and determination. Madam Speaker, I'm a history fan. I love American history. I also love Texas history. Not the history of dates and movements, but the history of the lives of individual Americans who have made a difference. Roy Benavides was one of those Americans. Roy Benavides was born in South Texas in a small town called Cuero on August the 5th, 1935. He was the son of a sharecropper. He was an orphan, and he had mixed blood of Yaqua Indian and Hispanic. So he was raised by his uncle after he lost his own family, and eventually he dropped out of school when he was 15. He was a migrant farm worker to take care of his family. He worked all over Texas and part of Colorado in the sugar beet fields and the cotton fields. But eventually he decided to join the Texas National Guard and then the United States Army in 1955. He joined up in Houston, Texas. And in 1965, he was sent to Vietnam as a member of the 82nd Airborne. While serving as an advisor to the South Vietnamese Army, he stepped on a landmine in South Vietnam. U.S. Army doctors at Brooke Medical Center told him he would never walk again. But he did walk, and not only that, he volunteered and returned back to Vietnam as a staff sergeant in the Army Special Forces. We call them the Green Berets. On May 2nd, 1968, his life changed and the lives of his fellow troopers changed forever. It is a story that is almost unbelievable. On the morning of May the 2nd, 1968, a 12-man Special Forces team was inserted into Cambodia to observe a large-scale North Vietnamese troop movement. They were eventually discovered by the enemy. Most of the team members were very close friends of Roy Benavides, who was the forward operating officer in Loc Ninh, Vietnam. 3 helicopters were sent to rescue the 12-man team, but they were unable to land because of the heavy enemy concentration. When a second attempt was made to reach the stranded team, Benavides jumped on board one of the helicopters armed only with a Bowie knife. As the helicopters reached the landing zone, Benavides realized the team members were likely too severely wounded to move to the helicopters. So by himself, he ran through heavy small arms fire to the wounded soldiers. He was wounded himself in the leg, the face, and the head in the process. He reorganized the team and signaled helicopters to land. But despite his injuries, Benavides was able to carry off half the wounded men to the helicopters. He then collected the classified documents held by now a dead team leader. As he completed this task, he was wounded again by an exploding grenade in the back, and then he was shot in the stomach. At that moment, the waiting helicopter pilot was also mortally wounded, and the helicopter crashed. So Benavides ran to collect the stunned crash survivors and form a perimeter. He directed air support. He ordered another extraction attempt and was wounded again as he was shot in the thigh. At this point, he was losing so much blood from his face wounds that his vision became blurred. Finally, another helicopter landed, and as Benavides carried a wounded friend to it, he was clubbed in the head with a rifle butt by an enemy soldier and then baked. Madam Speaker, Benavides was wounded in that one battle in that one day 37 times. 7 gunshot wounds. He had mortar fragments in his back and 2 bayonet wounds. But he saved the lives of 8 of his fellow troopers. Later, he was presumed dead and zipped up in a body bag. But right before they zipped up the bag, he spit in the doctor's face, letting the doctor know, yes, he was still alive. Amazing people, these young guns of the Green Berets. Madam Speaker, this is a photograph of Master Sergeant Roy Benavides. He eventually recovered from all of those wounds. He received the Distinguished Service Cross, and then many years later, Ronald Reagan presented him with the medal that he wears around his neck in this photograph, the Congressional Medal of Honor. President Reagan stated here in Washington, D.C. on presentation of that medal that if this were a movie, no one would really believe it could ever happen. What Roy Benavides did that day is unbelievable. And Madam Speaker, I ask unanimous consent at this time to insert the Medal of Honor citation for Roy Benavides. Madam Speaker, after he retired from the military, this 7th grade dropout went around America talking about the importance of education. He talked to young gang members. He talked to the Hispanic youth, telling them to stay in school and get an education. He was an amazing individual. A Navy ship has been named after him. Several elementary schools in Texas have been named after Master Sergeant Roy Benavides. And even a toy company has issued the Roy Benavides G.I. Joe action figure. In Texas, there are a disproportionate high number of Hispanic Americans who volunteer for the military. They are American patriots. Some legal immigrants even join and serve in Iraq and Afghanistan in the hope they will become U.S. citizens. Madam Speaker, as we celebrate Hispanic Heritage Month, one of those great Hispanic Americans was Roy Benavides, and he lived the American dream the way he wanted to. And that's just the way it is. I yield back.